Hello gems and welcome back to the Sapphires Hello gems and welcome back to the Sapphire Star, episode 4 of 10. We're almost halfway there. One more episode and we will be there. Let's go over a little bit of recap. So last episode, episode 3, we brought in our Photoshop file into Live2D Cubism, assigned all of our parts, we edited and edited meshes and learned how to do best practices for mesh editing, as well as assigned a texture atlas to all the artwork so our model could be textured. In this episode, we're going to be starting to add warp deformers. You're going to learn about rotating warp deformers, regular warp deformers, so that we can begin animating and moving our 2D art. We're finally going to be able to move our character. We're also going to be rigging in this episode once we set up all the warp deformers. We're going to be rigging the eyes blinking. We're going to be rigging the eyeballs looking around and moving when you look at different things on your screen. And we'll also be rigging how the mouth moves. And at the end, we'll do a test with the program called VTube Studio to see how everything is working. All right, let's hop into it. Awesome, we are back at it. So the next piece for us is going to be to organize our warp deformers. Some people will do this as they go. I usually set everything up before I do anything, just because I know it's going to help me. And I did that in my last half body VTuber series. This time, we're just going to approach it one by one, piece by piece. So we'll do a little bit of a mix of rigging and setting up the warp deformers because I want to show you a little bit of a different way about doing it. Some people prefer it this way compared to the other way where you set up all your warp deformers. And when I say that, I mean you would set up all of these before rigging absolutely anything on the character. There are a few key ones that I do want to set up to start, but we'll just start with that. So I have this other model open, and as I've discussed in the past, you can open models that you download off of the website to be able to reference if you're unsure of how to create a hierarchy or how like something like a skirt would go into the bigger picture. And remember, you'd have to unlock these pieces to be able to mess with them. So I'm going to go ahead and check my old model. Again, super duper helpful. So the first warp deformer we're going to want to make is warp body Z. This is going to be kind of the overall giant arcing warp deformer. Warp deformers are up here, and then here's a rotator deformer, and here's a rotation deformer creation tool. We're going to be talking about these two right now. So first we're going to click on this button here, and we're going to name this body warp Z. This is going to be a parent. Now there's a main idea here that I really want to touch on, and that is parent warp deformers and children warp deformers. Parent means it's in charge of all of the children. So if you have anything that is a child of a parent, they're going to follow suit with the parent. So the parent's kind of like the leader and the children follow. This is a really important concept to keep in mind when you're using these warp deformers. So this is going to be a parent because it's one of our big warp deformers. Down here, the number of Bezier divisions and conversion divisions. This is more of an advanced skill that you can eventually get to where you can change these and have them be different based on how much control and animation you want on your character, but the defaults will be fine. We're going to go ahead and click create. For the body warp deformer, it's this giant red box with the green pieces in between. So you can click the middle and drag it around. You want this to be covering your whole VTuber. You can hold shift down to make this scale evenly. If you don't hold shift, it's going to move around like that, and we don't want that because it's going to make your art look wonky. So you can go ahead and make it a little bit bigger on top of your character. And then we're going to move on to the next one, which is going to be leg L position. So let's go ahead, and this is going to be a rotator, which is a little bit different. We'll call this leg L position. Click create, and I'm going to go ahead and click and drag this. Her left is going to be this side right here. We want to put it sort of at the top of the thigh, and then we're going to click and drag it and see how that turns yellow. Drop it under the body warp Z, or actually let's move this on top and make the leg position under there. So we want the leg position to be a parent of body warp Z. And then we'll go ahead and click the rotator deformer and do leg R position. And we don't want it to be a parent. That's the mistake I made last time. Make it a child off the bat. We'll click create, and we'll want to find where this one went. It seems that it went in the same spot as the other one. There's the other one, and we'll go ahead and click and drag this to about the same place. Once you click it, you can hold shift down to make sure it stays in line with where the other one is if you want them to have an even destination when moving it. And then we'll go back up to body warp Z and do a body Z rotation. So we're going to do body Z rotation. This is so there can be rotation in the hips. We'll go ahead and make sure that's a child and click create, and we'll move that down. And this one we will move right here at about the center of the hips. Maybe like the belly button would be a good place. Next we'll go to the body Z rotation and create a regular warp deformer called body warp Y. And Y is going to be your up and down, and X is going to be your left and right, like a grid. I try to think of it as how Y kind of stretches far into the sky with the long stem, so that's how I remember it's up and down. And then X is across because you have to cross each other, so then I think of kind of like a T shape if you were to rotate the X. So hopefully that can help with remembering it. For the body warp Y, we want it to be covering the full body as well. So I'm going to hold down Shift and scale this and then move this here. So we'll just move that right on over, and again, make sure it's covering everything. I don't want the body Z rotation to be the child. I want this to be out here and drag the body warp Y as a child of body Z rotation. I messed it up again, but that's okay because we have our references we can look at. Next, I'm going to create another warp deformer called breathe warp. This is when your character is breathing so that it has a more natural movement. It doesn't seem so stagnant. You want this to be about as big as the body as well. I might make it just a little bit smaller, but it should really be covering most of the body. And I'm just going to save for good measure. We haven't animated anything yet. This is just setting up the deformers that's going to allow us to animate. Now, I want the breath warp to be a child of the body warp Y. So again, I keep forgetting to select it, but again, that's okay. Just make sure that it's aligned with what I'm doing here. And then for the breath warp, we're going to want to create another rotation, and we'll call this neck rotation. So anything you'd want to move, this is not like a set in stone. Once you understand how these can kind of link with each other, the parent and child, and how the deformers work, you can pretty much do anything. So if you wanted like this necklace to rotate, you're going to use a rotation deformer. So remember, you can use these things super freely once you start understanding how they work. Don't be afraid to mess with stuff. You're not really going to mess anything up. You can always go back to your earlier versions. So for the neck R, we're going to move this up here. You can also make the circle smaller or bigger. I tend to just do kind of a medium size. We'll move that kind of at where we want the neck to pivot. So I'm just going to put that about right there, and that should be good. Next, we want to do the face rotation. So make sure we're on the neck. I don't know why I call it neck R. She doesn't have a right neck. Oh, neck rotation. Hello. Forgetting my own naming system. All right, so then we'll click rotation. Next, we'll do face R for face rotation. This is going to be separate from the neck rotation, and we're going to put that right on her chin, and I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller because we don't really need it to be that big. And I'm just going to start with doing the eye warps. So I'm going to go ahead and create a warp deformer and call this IR, and it's going to spawn in super small here. I'm going to hold Shift key when I bring it up and move it over. I'm going to go Shift down, and remember, we want it to be her right. Her right's going to be this eye here. So you can go ahead and kind of shift this to be whatever size you need it to be to fit around your specific character's eye, as long as it's encompassing everything within the eye. Then we'll go back to neck R, create another one, and we'll call this IL. Click create. Make sure that IL and IR are underneath the face rotation. It goes neck to face to eye to eye. This is where it can get a little crazy, but bear with me. So next we're going to create another rotator, and we're going to do eye POS for eye position. This is going to be directly for the iris, so that the iris can move separately from the left eye. This is going to be IPOS L, and then we're going to click enter to make sure it goes through. Then we're going to go to eye right, create a warp deformer, and do IPOS R, and make sure it's a child. And next you're going to have a ton of highlights that you'll want to make warp deformers for, so you can control the eye highlights within the eye individually. So again, think of it as in a broader perspective. So the whole eye, the IR, is going to be the biggest thing that's happening, and then anything that's happening inside of the eye will be a child, because the whole eye should be controlling everything inside of the eye. So if we're making any other deformers relating to moving the eye around, it's going to be underneath that eye. Before we make any of the highlight warp deformers, I'm going to start moving some of my pieces in here so we can start organizing it a bit better. So I'm going to scroll down, and let's move both of these peoples. You can hold down Shift key to select both, and I'm going to move these guys into the deformer section here, and we're going to go to the eye position left. It's the position because it's not directly the eye left, because it's deeper within inside the eye. So we'll move that there. I'm going to scroll back down, and all the eyeliner, all the left eyeliner is going to go into the whole eye, IL, and the deformer for this, for all the eyeliner, is going to go into IL. Let's scroll back down here and see what else we have left for the left eye. The eye white will also go into the whole eye deformer. Here are the highlights for now. For the lower eye, I'm also going to drop that into the IL, and then we have a ton of highlights, left highlights. So we're just going to move them into the IL for now, and we're just going to move them up there, and I'm going to move them into their own category in a second. So let's just make sure we get all of them. We have a ton of glowing dots that we also need, and this little starlight piece. So we'll just select all that, open deformer, and move it into the left eye. It looks like we got everything for the left eye. Fantastic. We put the pupils in the eye position L, and next we're going to go back to IL, create a new warp deformer, make sure it's the child, and then we'll call this eye highlight L1. And we're just going to move the big highlight in here. And I want to make sure this is also on top for the draw order. So I actually just had to remove the clipping ID because my eye light was getting stuck behind the eyelash here, and I didn't want that. So I just removed and deleted the clipping ID so that it could stay on top. Next, we'll go back to IL, create a warp deformer, and we'll call this highlight L, because that's the same name as this one right here. So we'll go ahead and create that and drop this in here. By the way, to check our warp deformers, we don't want our highlight warp deformer to be that big, so I'm going to click it, hold shift, drag it down. So if you create your warp deformer and you're adding your pieces later, you're going to hold down Control and Alt and start moving it down so that it doesn't affect it. You see how it turns red? If we were to just move it down, it's going to move the eye light with it already. So that's a really important tip as well, is hold Control Alt on your keyboard anytime you're moving this piece, if you're doing it later if you're adding the pieces later like I am. Then we'll go ahead and hold that over there. That should be a good size for that. That's the one downside to adding them later and not just creating them now, is that you're gonna have to move them, which I can find to be very tedious. Here's this one as well. I'm gonna have to hold down Alt Shift, make it smaller, move it down. See how frustrating this can get. So that's why sometimes I don't always like to do it this way, but that's why there's many different options depending on how you want to do it. I'll just make that a little bit bigger. Okay, fantastic. Now the reason I get into separating a lot of this is because you may have seen some characters' eyes be very lively and have lots of physics and bubbly and move. Having them super separate like this is going to give you more control to be able to do fun stuff with your model like that later. But again, you don't have to start that advanced. You can work towards something like that if this is your first model. Next, we'll go back up to IL, create another warp deformer, make sure it's a child, and we'll just call this glow dots. I'm going to put all mine in one for now. You can separate yours as much as you'd like. I'm just going to move those down into glow dots, and we're going to get this warp deformer hold. Remember, Alt and Control, move it down, Alt and Control. We're still holding it to make sure it's not messing with our pieces, and we'll just go ahead and have that control all that. And I'm also going to drop the starlight light into that, and we'll just make this a little bit bigger to cover some of those extra red areas. And I went back to the left eye, and it looks like my warp deformer is way too big, so I'm going to go ahead and make this smaller. Again, while holding the Alt Shift, we're going to move that and make that about the right size. Perfect. And then you'll do the exact same thing for the other eye, but I'm going to leave that speed paint out of this video for the sake of time. So we're going to start with moving the eyes, because that's probably one of the easiest things to animate. First thing we'll do is make sure you have the parameter tab selected on your right side. We'll create a folder by clicking the folder button there. We'll call this folder eyeball. We're going to select by holding down Shift both of these and click and drag them into the folder, and then you can click on the folder to open it and see them again. Now the first thing to check is that we have this point moving all the way up to 1 and then -1, and we'll check the same one. They're ready to go. Next, what you'll do is click on eyeball X, select it so it's grayed out, and then we'll drop 3 points. This is going to be dropping keyforms. This is what's going to help us animate our character. We'll drop the 3 keyforms, green signaling that it is the current active keyforms. You can click and drag to the left and right, or you can right click and snap on the keyforms. We're going to right click and snap to the right, and because this is X, as I said, X is going across horizontal, we're going to hold down Shift, and we're going to click the green center and move this to the right. Now you can see the glow pieces aren't moving with my eye, and that's because they're above the eye positioning. We want to make sure it's a child of the eye position R. So there's a good example of when something wouldn't move if it wasn't set up correctly. So we're just going to click and drag that under eye position R, go back to it, and now that we're on the right, we're going to pull it, and now we can see that everything we need is moving correctly. So let's go ahead and click Shift, hold Shift to keep it down, and we'll move it to the right. We don't want to go too far because I don't think your eyes go maybe that far. This is when it again helps to have a mirror in front of you to see how far can you actually look to the right. Maybe like take a picture of it, and we'll just stop it there. And we're going to do the same thing with the left eye. So we just dropped these keyforms on this warp form, the eye position right. Now we want to go to the eye position left. So let's open that, go to eye position left, and it looks like I don't have it set up completely correctly, so she looks a little wonky right now. I'm going to hold down Control Alt again to make sure that we can get this right. and let's make sure that's good to go. Fantastic. So see how these are all white now again, these keyforms? That's because we don't have the keyframes dropped on eye position L yet. So we're going to click the 3 again to drop them and snap to the right by clicking right click and hold shift. And once again, everything's moving, but things are not connected correctly. We want to make sure that these are children of the eye position L. So I'm going to click and make sure that these are all children of the eye position L. Go back to the eye position L warp deformer and move it. Everything should be moving in alignment. Fantastic. So now what we can do is drag the keyform back and forth to see, does that look right? Is that what we want it to look like? Now we're going to do the other side where we're going to snap right click to the left. I'm going to move the left eye over this way. And then we'll go back to the eye position right and do the same thing and have it move that way. So now we have them looking left and right. Fantastic. Next, we're going to do Y, which is up and down. So we're going to go to eye position L. We drop the 3 points onto eyeball Y. We're going to snap click to the right, and we're going to hold shift and move the eye up. The reason I hold shift is so that it doesn't move around as crazily. It's more locked into place. Otherwise, you can move it freely. So holding shift just tries to keep it a little bit more organized if you need to be more precise. So we'll go about here, and then I'm going to go to the left eye position warp deformer, hold shift, lift it up, and whoops, I made a mistake. So now you can see how this is moving, but I didn't drop my 3 keyforms, so I didn't do that right. So now I have to snap back to the middle, drop the 3, and then snap back to the right point with right click, and then drag the eye up, and now it should be working and moving. Fantastic. Now let's do the left side. So we'll snap click to the left, have the eye looking down, and then we'll go to the other one, have the eye looking down, and now she should be looking down and then looking up. Fantastic. So next, you just want to check and make sure that the Y is moving your eyes up and down and that the X is the one moving your eyes left and right. After that, we can snap both back to middle. We'll click this link button, and then we'll go up to the hamburger menu, synthesize corners. This is so you don't have to manually animate each corner. It's a quick way to be able to link them. And now when we move the eyes around, they should have a smooth movement. Now the right one's going a little crazy. So I'm going to do is right click snap to this upper corner, and we'll just go back to the eye position L and we'll adjust it. So sometimes you will have to manually adjust it if it's not working correctly. So I just fixed all the corners there so that it's manually good. I don't always have the best luck with the synthesized corners, so sometimes you will have to go back and edit it, as I mentioned. Now you can unlink these at any time if you need to go back and re-edit things and relink them without it really destroying anything. That was something I was really scared of when I was first learning. I thought if I unlinked this, it was broken forever. But no, you can unlink it anytime and relink it, so it's totally fine. So now we have eyes moving, which is fantastic. Now a way we can kind of look at it is go up to modeling, open the physics scene, zoom into our model. I'm holding spacebar to move it around, and just go ahead and click and drag and move it around. So this is what it's going to look like when it's in the actual engine that can move the VTuber. Alright, and then we can exit out of that. Yay, we have moving eyes. Fantastic. Next, we'll snap it back to the center and then close that folder, and we're going to do eye blinking next. For that, we're going to create a new folder and call this one eye, and we're going to drag IL open, IL smile open, the R and left ones, these 4 right here, and we're going to drag that into eye. And then we'll open that folder so that we can see them, and we're going to want to set these up correctly. So we want this maximum to be 1.2 and this to be 0 at the far left. You see how we see this decimal over here? What I'm going to do is right click in this white space, click edit parameter, and we're going to change the maximum parameter to 1.2. The default is whatever it is on at its resting stage. All right, and then we'll click OK. We want that to be 1.2 for the open, and then for the other eye open, we also want that to be 1.2. So I'm going to right click edit parameter and change this to 1.2, click OK. For these guys, it's okay that they're just 1 and not 1.2. So for this one, we actually want to drop very specific points. And to do that, we'll double click in the white space here. We'll add a point at 1.2 by simply clicking. We're going to do one at 1.0. Sometimes it won't let you hit it directly, so you have to click that plus key and go and add it. And we'll do another plus at 0.8. And then we want to add one at 0 as well. And we'll click OK, and you can see those 3 keyforms here. And in the left eye, make sure we have that selected over here. We're going to go ahead now and add very specific keyforms rather than just dropping 3 or just dropping 2. So we're going to double click in this white space. We're going to add a 1.2 to add a very specific number. If you don't see it here, we click the plus, and we'll do 1.0, and then we also want a 0.8. So we'll add that, and we're going to want a 0.0 as well. So I'll just click on the timeline to add that. Fantastic. Now, instead of actually using this direct warp deformer to close the eye, as we can see, that's not going to work out very well. There's a super cool tool. I like to call it the worm tool. It's called the deform path edit tool though. And you can use this for things like eyebrows and eyes. I find it very, very helpful. We're going to click on the main eyeliner, and we're gonna go ahead and drop a point here. If you need to add an individual one, you can click the plus right there. I'm gonna click snap plus, right click snap plus, right click plus, right click plus if you need to add the individual ones. And for our widest one, 1.2, we want to open this a little bit and make the eyes a little bit wider if we can. And actually, I just realized these aren't on the same layer, so we're going to have to make a separate one for the eyelash, which is totally fine. And then we'll go to the big lash, and we're going to give that one a worm tool as well, and move the eye just a little bit. So it just kind of has that little bit of that widening feeling. And we'll also go to the eye white, and we can actually directly pull on the red here as well to widen that. But we want to make sure, again, that we have our keyforms added. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and plus these. And then we can right click snap to the far right and move the white so that's moving now, you can see, with the eyelash there. We'll do the same for our pupil. We're going to want to plus everything here, and at the far end we will widen it a bit so it has just a little bit of that lively kind of woo. And next we'll go to our little lashes and use our worm tool again. We'll go to this one, worm tool it, and then we'll go back and add our keyforms. I've been having to double click for them to get them to go through, and we'll make sure we're on our selection tool again and go to the far right and move these up with it. You might have to zoom in super far if that red little box is getting in the way. Had that happen before, and then again make sure the green is added. It's going to be really tedious here to start for sure, but once you get the keyforms in, it'll be a breeze. And then we'll zoom in again to move this up. And now it has that little lively kind of movement. And again, you can mess with this, like this eyeliner is not fully lined up. I want to make sure we have that feeling right. Yep, that looks good. And then we might want this little guy down here too, and I'm just going to use a worm deformer. So you can use the rotator, you can use the worm tool, you can use anything that's going to get you to your final destination, whatever that may be. My final destination is beautiful anime, sparkling eyed, doe-eyed waifu. That's my destination. I don't know about you, but fantastic. So now we have like the little widening eye. That's kind of a little extra feature to add. And now what we'll do is go all the way, fling all the way to the left, and we're gonna pull this down. The worm is coming down. So again, I'm going to zoom in here, pull this down, and this is going to take some messing with to get it smooth, to get it right. We're going to get the eyelash as well, and now that we have our points, it's going to be fantastic. This is when you may want to reference and see like what can you do to make this look as good as possible. Now you're just going to keep messing with it until you get it somewhere that you like. And this is when I'd maybe add an additional point if I felt like it needed it to be a little bit smoother. So there's some issues for sure with the blinking because of the way that I separated my files, which again is a learning opportunity. So we just want to make sure it's closing in on itself nicely, and you can always add more points to work on smoothing that out. So now see how that's moving a little bit smoother, and we might want to adjust this a bit here. I definitely think that's looking better, and we can click off of it too and then see how it's closing. So if you're enjoying how that's closing, next we want to do the rest of the eye, of course. So we're going to go to the whole IL, and we're going to make sure we have these points added. I'm going to right click snap and then add them. And now next I want to go to the eye white, and I want this on the far left snap to be completely closed in, so I can just pull this red down and pull this red up, and we're just going to kind of like pull the points and hide it underneath so it will close in with it. You can do that for these dots that did not quite make it, and then I'll hold this red and pull that down as well. And honestly, we really don't even want to see that at all. So what I'm going to do to solve that problem instead is I'm just going to turn the opacity to 0 as it goes down. So it should fade. We probably even want it literally at 0, like right here. So let's just change the opacity to 0. And again, because it's all connected through keyframes. So it will read all of that. And then we'll want this left eye to also disappear. I'll do an opacity shift for that one too. So we'll just go ahead and add our points, right click, snap, double click the point. And then by probably here, we'll just turn the opacity to 0. And we also want to make sure it's 0 on these other guys as well. So we'll click 0, enter. So this is a good way to utilize things as well if you need to. So there's our blink. Now remember, when you're doing the other eye, make sure you're on that specific eye in your warp deformers and that you're selecting eye right open. And you're just going to replicate everything you did up here, but for the eye right. Next, we're going to animate the eyebrows. This is actually one of my most favorite parts because eyebrows make characters so expressive in all of animation, not just Live2D, which is super cool. So there's going to be quite a lot of pieces to the eyebrow, but we're going to work through it. So first, let's open our menus and drop down to the face rotation, and we're going to create a new warp deformer, and we're going to call this eyebrow L, and then we're going to, of course, do an eyebrow R. So next, let's do eyebrow R, and we want to make sure that's outside of it. I accidentally made it a child of eyebrow L, so let's make sure they're their own separate pieces. And we're going to create a few deformers within this. So we have eyebrow L, and then we're going to do brow L position like we did with the eye, and we're going to do a right one too. So create a new warp deformer, eyebrow, or whoops, we'll just do brow, that's my PC, brow R position. And then we're going to go back up to the L and then create another child, which is going to be brow L angle. So there's going to be three, the eyebrow L, brow L position, eyebrow angle, and they should each keep going lower into each other. The eyebrow L being the parent and these two being children. But the brow L angle needs to be a child of the position. So now we're going to do one for the right. We're going to do brow. We'll create a folder called brow, and we're going to grab all the brow parameters in here and then open that. And it looks like we got these ones as well, so let's make sure they're all in there too. Alright, and then let's go find our eyebrows to make sure that they are placed correctly. We're going to select eyebrow R and put it in the eyebrow R deformer, and then same for the eyebrow L, but put it in the L deformer. Perfect. Then we'll go back to eyebrow L, and we're going to start with the Y position. So brow L, and then we're going to select this and drop 2 points, right click snap to the top. And it looks like our deformer again was moved down where it shouldn't have been, so I'm going to click Control Alt to make this smaller, and keep holding Control Alt to move it on top of where the eyebrow is, and make sure it's encompassing all of the brow. Perfect. And let's fix R while we're at it as well. So we're going to go ahead and make that smaller while holding our Alt Control down. We'll make it fit there. So next we'll select brow LY. Y is going to be up and down, eyebrow L, and then we'll add 2 green points, and to the far right we're going to hold shift and move our eyebrow up, and then we're going to snap to the left and move our eyebrow down. So this is just going to be up and down. And now let's do the same thing for the other brow. So we'll go to eyebrow R and make sure you're on the RY, drop our 2 points, snap right click to the far right keyframe, move this up, try to make them even when we can, and then we'll go to the far left and make sure it's down, and we can also move this one down to match them to be similar. So now we should be able to move them both up and down. And we do want a neutral position, so I'm actually going to open this and go in and add another point. So again, you could have started with adding the 3, but sometimes we forget and we make mistakes, and that's totally okay, and then you can fix it in an alternative way. So let's go to eyebrow L, and I'm going to do the same thing. I want to add the 3rd point, so let's go ahead and click that after we had double clicked the white space. Now they both have their mid positions and their active positions. Next, we're going to do moving left and right, the brow X. On the same eyebrow L, we're going to do the left and right, so let's drop 3 points this time and go to the far right and move our eyebrow this way, and then go to the far left, snap to the far left and move our eyebrow that way. So it should be moving back and forth. We'll do the same thing with the brow R, switch to that warp deformer, drop our 3 green points, snap to the right, and we'll move the brow X to the right too, so we can again try to make them similar. Snap to the left, move them over, and then we can bring them both to the center. And I just moved my eyebrow actually down into L angle. We're going to do the same with moving this eyebrow down into the angle version so that it's the furthest down. Now for the other warp deformers, I have to move them over again because they're far away. So brow L position, we're going to hold Alt Control, and we're going to move this above the brow, and then we're also going to select the brow L angle, and we're going to move that above the brow as well. And for the brow L angle, we're going to drop our 3 points, and to the right we're going to tilt it by using the rotation, and then to the snap to the left we're going to tilt it down. That's kind of like the angry. So then we have it tilting both ways. And for the right eyebrow, we're going to do the same thing. We want to make sure that we have our warp deformers the right size and moved over by the eyebrow, so let's work on that. You can avoid this mistake by creating children of warp deformers after you have adjusted the first one, because then it should be creating warps that are smaller within themselves instead of randomly throwing them elsewhere. Great, and now I moved my eyebrow R under the eyebrow angle, and then we're going to go to brow R angle, drop 3 points, snap to the right, and we'll go this one to the right as well. And this is actually going to be tilting the opposite way, so we're going to tilt it up there, and then we're going to snap to the left and pull this one in for the angry. Angry. So then we're going to drop our points directly on the eyebrow R for the eyebrow R form. We're going to drop the 3, and we're going to snap to the right, and we're going to pull down the brow to give it sort of that sad look. And then we're gonna go to brow L and do the same thing. Drop our 3 and pull it down, and again you can try to match it as best we can the other side. Fantastic. And now we can snap everything back to normal, and you can close the brow folder as that one is ready to go. Next we're gonna rig the mouth, so you'll go to your face R and we'll add a new warp deformer and call it mouth warp. Go ahead and click create, and you'll drag everything to do with the mouth, which will probably be below for you, and drag that into mouth warp. So the first thing we'll do is we'll right click to the 1 point snap, and we're going to select the upper lip actually first, and I just use the worm tool to give them points so that you're able to move it, and then once you use the worm tool, make sure you're back on that selection. We're just going to move this up for now, and then I'll go to the lip line. Same thing, I use the worm tool to outline this. And for the mouth, we're going to drop our 2 points. Same concept, I just used the worm tool to be able to edit the mouth. We're just making the mouth open right now. And then we'll go to the teeth, drop our 2 points, hold shift and move the teeth up, go to the fang, drop our 2 points, hold shift, bring it up, and the other tooth, drop 2, pull it up. And then we might need the back mouth. We're going to drop the 2 as well because it looks like it needs to kind of move up a little bit with the rest of the mouth. So we'll move that and just make sure that each edge and corner is covered. And it looks like the top lip for some reason didn't get its 2 points, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop that again, and I'm going to make sure it's closed. That looks good. And then for the right, we want it open. There we go. So sometimes you'll miss things or you'll forget to add a point, and again, that's fine. You can just go back and edit it, or you can Control Z, of course, to undo if need be. So that's open and close. Perfect. And then next for the mouth form, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, and I recommend looking at a reference. We can open the mouth form and see that it will be either closed and it will be moving pretty much from happy to a version of sad, and then we'll just keep it open right now and work on the open shapes. So open and kind of smiling wide is going to be the first one. So I'm going to go back to my upper lip, and we're going to drop a single point here. We're just going to drop each point in by double clicking the green. Let's snap to here, and then let's open this. It's going to be a big ol' smile. And then let's go to the line, and we're going to drop our points again, double click on each one, and then when we're snapped to the right, let's now move the line up and go back here and edit that a little. And then go to our lower lip, and we'll drop our points again. So right click plus, and I want this to kind of be like a smile with her teeth, so I think we're gonna kind of pull this in a little bit, and then we'll go to her main row of teeth, and then I'm gonna drop a plus on each point. So open both the far right points should have that sort of open smile. And then we're gonna snap to the second, which means it kind of comes down and does a little bit more of an O shape. So let's go ahead and snap to the second one, and I'm gonna move it a little bit more inward into kind of an O shape. We'll select the lip, and now we have our points dropped, so you don't have to redo that. It's just a little bit more difficult in the beginning, but we have them all dropped, so it should be reading the movements that we're making now. So that should be moving into the more O shape. There we go. And then now let's go ahead and check this one. So then it's going to be kind of a smaller O to this point here. So we'll pull that in even more. And let's go to the back mouth as well. Drop our points. Pull these edges in. And now the teeth also need to be pulled in a bit because they're starting to show. So that should be shifting more into that O shape. Perfect. And then let's see what our final left one is. We'll snap to the left, and that's like a really stretched O. So we'll go here, and then we'll make it like more stretched. So this is again when those reference files really come in handy to know what you're looking for. And keep in mind too, there are a lot of ways to rig mouths. There are more complicated ways, and there are tools and things to make it look better, but this is just a beginner, more basic tutorial because it can get really crazy, but there's plenty of tutorials out there by great creators here on YouTube, and the Live2D community does an amazing job providing resources the best they can. There's always sections and places that you can look when you're trying to figure out how to do these other pieces. And I encourage you to make your own tutorial, even if you know how to do something or figure something out that you think would be useful to other people, because it could really just help the whole community thrive and grow. So we'll go ahead and move these up. We're just really aiming for that O shape, and that looks pretty good. I think we're gonna squeeze this in even more. We'll see how much we can push it. It's really tough when you do it because I did pretty like 3D looking lips, and most people might have like more anime lips, but I thought this is what I struggled with when I was trying to learn. I was like, I have a different mouth. How do I do this? And you just gotta do your best and see how it turns out. And if it doesn't turn right, just keep looking for resources until you figure out how to do it. And I think these teeth, I think that's probably fine, yeah. So that looks good. Looks a little silly. I probably probably spend a little bit more time like just adjusting it to look a little bit better. But for the sake of the tutorial, it will work just fine. He's like, oh, it's like a pogger's face. Yeah, so getting it realistic can be tough. I think that lip is like sticking out a little too much, so we can like pull that in and that might look a little bit better. She's like, oh my god. All right, sweet. And then after that, you can link your mouth pieces so that it's all kind of pieced together. Fantastic. We rigged so much today. So now let's talk a little bit about how you can go ahead and test this. We'll be talking about this a little bit later in the series as well. But if you want to test, you'll go up to File, Export for Runtime, Export as MO3, and it might take a really long time. Once you create physics, you'll want to check this box, Export Physics Settings, which we haven't gotten to yet. But if you want to do them, make sure that's checked or that will not end up working in the final outcome. So we'll just go ahead and click OK, save a place where you're going to be able to utilize it. So I have a Syafire video test folder. I'm just going to create a new folder in here and just call this Saya test, I don't know, V003. And we'll double click that and we'll save it there and we'll be back in a moment. Actually, no, we're going to be right here because I'll show you what to do while this is saving. So I personally really like VTube Studio. There's other programs you can use for your 2D model. There's also phone apps and stuff like that, but I like VTube Studio. It's great. So that's what we're going to be using in this video. There's also PRPR Live, and I do have a video on this channel talking about that if you want to try that one, but I personally think VTube Studio is one of the best ones. So once you get everything launched, you'll click on this little person here and you're going to click import your own model and then click open folder. It's going to open your file explorer to where all your models are going to be located. I'm going to right click and create a new folder and we're just going to call this Saya test 3. Click enter, and this is where I'm going to end up putting all the folders that are done being exported once this is done saving. If you have any random pop-ups come up, you can just click OK, kind of ignore it for now. Now that we have everything exported, you should get a pop-up folder like this. So I'm going to right click, highlight, and copy everything. Go back to VTube Studio, and again we're going to import our own model, open that folder that I talked about, go to Saya test 3, and we'll paste everything in there. And then we can just click OK. I'm going to open this and you should see your new model pop up. Oh man, I think this is the one. We have a lot going on. I'm going to have to delete some other ones. But if you don't see it, you can exit out of this, exit out of it, double click to bring back the bar and reopen it. And sometimes that will refresh it. So let's go ahead and click, I think it's this new one right here. And just click auto setup for now and click OK. And once it sets up some of those parameters, we'll go to the settings and then we'll click the camera and turn your camera on. We'll click OK. If your camera's having trouble turning on, I like to unplug it and re-plug it in. And there we go. So now we have a basic look. I still definitely do not like the way the bottom lip is like so puffy when I open my mouth. But this is a good starting point for everything. And let's test the eyebrows. Oh no. So the blinking should be working, and this is a good way to start testing stuff. So if there's something you don't like, this is the time to be like, okay, I don't like that. We gotta fix that. Good work. This was a long one and you got a lot done. You should be super proud of yourself. In the next episode, we'll be rigging the head, the body, and the arms. So we're going to be getting a lot more movement once we get that done. We're a little stale, a little stuck right now, but that's okay. Again, you did really great work. You should be super duper proud of yourself, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye!